She stumbled through our front door at 8:30 on a Monday evening, looking like an end warmed over. Julia's usually perfect blonde hair hung limp around her face, and her skin had taken on this sickly gray pallor that made my stomach drop. In 10 years of marriage, I'd never seen her look this rough, not even after her worst hangovers or that bout of food poisoning from our anniversary dinner. "Jesus, Jules, what happened to you?" I dropped my beer and rushed to catch her elbow as she swayed against the doorframe. "I feel awful, Evan." Her voice came out as barely a whisper, cracking on the words. "Really, really awful." My wife was many things, ambitious, sometimes cold, occasionally demanding, but she wasn't dramatic about being sick. Julia was the type who'd work through a migraine and call it character building. Seeing her like this, weak and shaking, sent alarm bells screaming through my head. "What kind of awful? Talk to me." I guided her to the couch, noting how she leaned heavily against me. Her skin felt clammy through her business suit. "Fever and chills, and this pain in my stomach that just won't quit." She doubled over slightly, wrapping her arms around her midsection. "It started this morning, but it's gotten so much worse." I pressed the back of my hand to her forehead. She was burning up, way beyond normal fever territory. "How long have you felt like this?" "Since I woke up, maybe earlier. I thought it was just stress from the conference, but..." She trailed off, closing her eyes and taking shallow breaths. That was my wife, always trying to power through everything. The regional sales conference in Boston had been a big deal for her marketing firm, and she'd been preparing for weeks. But this wasn't stress or exhaustion. This was something serious. "We're going to the hospital," I said, already reaching for my keys. "Evan? No. I just need to rest. Look at yourself, Jules. You can barely stand up." I helped her to her feet, supporting most of her weight. "I'm not taking any chances with this." The gratitude in her eyes was mixed with something else, something that looked almost like guilt. But I was too worried to analyze it. All I could think about was getting her medical attention before whatever this was got worse. The drive to Regional Medical Center took 15 minutes that felt like hours. Julia slumped in the passenger seat, occasionally shivering despite the warm September evening. I kept glancing over at her, my insurance adjuster brain running through worst-case scenarios. Food poisoning, appendicitis, some kind of infection, none of it good. "Thank you," she whispered as we pulled into the emergency room parking lot, "for not asking questions, for just taking care of me." "That's what husbands do," I said, though something in her tone struck me as odd. Why would I ask questions? She was sick. End of story. The ER was surprisingly quiet for a Monday night. The triage nurse, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and efficient movements, took one look at Julia and fast-tracked us through check-in. "Temperature's 103.2, she announced after taking vitals. "Blood pressure's elevated. How long has she been feeling sick?" "Since this morning," I answered, when Julia just nodded weakly. "Any recent travel?" "She just got back from a business trip to Boston," I said. The nurse made notes and assured us a doctor would see us shortly. We settled into the waiting area. Julia curled against my side like she hadn't done in months. Despite my worry, I felt a strange comfort in having her need me like this. 20 minutes later, a doctor appeared at the entrance to the treatment area. "Julia Atwood?" "That's us," I said, helping Julia to her feet. The doctor was a woman in her early 40s, Asian American, with sharp features and an air of quiet competence. Her badge read, Dr. Sarah Kim. She led us to a private examination room, her manner professional but somehow pointed. "I'm Dr. Kim. Can you describe your symptoms for me?" She directed the question to Julia, who had gone very still. "Fever, chills, abdominal pain," Julia managed, not quite meeting the doctor's eyes. "When did these symptoms start?" "This morning." Dr. Kim made notes, then looked up sharply. "Any nausea? Burning during urination?" Julia's face flushed red beneath the pallor. "Some. Yes. I see. And you mentioned you've been traveling? Business conference. I got back this evening. Any recent intimate activity? The question hung in the air like a physical presence. Julia's eyes darted to me, then back to the doctor. Only with my husband. Something about the way she said it made my skin crawl. Too quick, too defensive. Dr. Kim's expression remained neutral. Any new intimate partners in the last few months? No. Julia's voice was firm, but I noticed her hands were shaking worse than before. I'm going to order some blood work and a complete panel, Dr. Kim said, including screening for transmitted infections. Is that really necessary? Julia asked quickly. With your symptoms, yes. It's standard protocol. The doctor's tone brooked no argument. The tests will take about 2 hours. We'll get you started on IV fluids in the meantime. As the nurse came in to draw blood, I squeezed Julia's hand. She squeezed back, but her palm was sweaty and cold. Something about this whole situation felt wrong, though I couldn't put my finger on what. The waiting room became our temporary prison for the next 2 hours. Julia dozed fitfully against my shoulder while I scrolled through my phone, trying to distract myself from the growing knot in my stomach. The rational part of my brain kept insisting this was probably just some kind of stomach bug or food poisoning, but the way Dr. Kim had asked those questions... Evan? Julia's voice was small. Yeah? Whatever this is, whatever the tests show, I need you to know that I love you. I looked down at her, puzzled by the intensity in her voice. I love you too, but you're going to be fine. It's probably just something you picked up at the conference. She nodded, but didn't look convinced. If anything, she looked more afraid. At 11:15, Dr. Kim reappeared. Mr. and Mrs. Atwood, can you come with me, please? We followed her back to a small office rather than the examination room. That seemed like a bad sign. Dr. Kim gestured for us to sit, then settled behind her desk with a file folder. The blood work shows you have a bacterial infection, she began, looking directly at Julia. Specifically, chlamydia. The words hit me like a physical blow. That's impossible. Dr. Kim's gaze shifted to me briefly, then back to Julia. The test results are quite clear. This is a recent infection, contracted within the last few weeks. But we've been together for 10 years, I said, my voice sounding strange and distant to my own ears. We're married. How could she have... You should tell him, Dr. Kim said quietly to Julia. Tell me what? I looked back and forth between them, Julia's face crumpling, and the doctor's expression remaining professionally neutral. Julia was crying now, ugly sobs that shook her whole body. I can't do this. Dr. Kim sighed and picked up her phone. She scrolled through something, then turned the screen toward us. This is my husband, Marcus. The photo showed a man in his early 40s with sandy brown hair and a practiced smile. I recognized him immediately. Marcus Kim, regional sales manager for a medical supply company. He'd been at several of the same industry events as Julia over the past year. Julia's face went completely white. You know him, Dr. Kim continued, her voice taking on an edge of ice. You know him quite well, actually. My brain struggled to process what was happening. Julia, do you know this man? He gave you chlamydia, Dr. Kim said when Julia couldn't speak. He gave it to me, too. The room started spinning. I gripped the arms of my chair, trying to anchor myself to something solid. Are you telling me that my wife has been having an affair with my husband for the past 6 months? Dr. Kim finished. Yes, that's exactly what I'm telling you. She reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a manila folder. I became suspicious about 3 weeks ago when Marcus started exhibiting symptoms. When he finally confessed, he told me about his business trip girlfriend. Imagine my surprise when I ran your wife's name through our system and realized she'd been a patient here before. Julia was hyperventilating now, gasping for air between sobs. I felt completely detached from my body, like I was watching this happen to someone else. The business trips, I said slowly. Boston, Chicago, Philadelphia. Hotel records, credit card receipts, text messages, Dr. Kim said, sliding the folder across the desk. It's all in there. Marcus was quite thorough in his documentation, apparently. I took the folder with numb fingers. It was thick, maybe 50 pages of printed evidence. Hotel receipts with both their names, photos of them together at restaurant bars, screenshots of text messages that made my stomach turn. I'm filing for divorce, Dr. Kim continued. I thought you should know the truth before you made any decisions about your own marriage. Julia finally found her voice. Evan, please, let me explain. Explain what? I stood up abruptly, the folder clutched in my hands. Explain how you've been screwing this woman's husband for 6 months. Explain how you brought home a transmitted disease. Explain which part, exactly? I never meant for this to happen, but it did happen. For 6 months, it happened. I looked at Dr. Kim, who was watching this unfold with grim satisfaction. Thank you. For telling me. For the evidence. I'm prescribing antibiotics for both of you, she said, returning to professional mode. The infection is easily treatable. The rest, well, that's up to you. The drive home was silent except for Julia's occasional sniffles. I kept the folder on my lap, afraid to open it but unable to let it go. 10 years of marriage, reduced to a manila folder full of proof that my wife was a stranger. Our house felt different when we walked through the front door. Same furniture, same paint on the walls, same family photos scattered around, but everything had shifted somehow, like looking at a familiar room through a funhouse mirror. Julia headed straight for the kitchen and poured herself a large glass of wine. I noticed her hands had stopped shaking, now that the truth was out. Are you going to say anything? She asked. I set the folder on the kitchen counter and stared at it. What would you like me to say? I don't know. Scream at me, throw something. Tell me I'm a horrible person. Would that make you feel better? She took a long sip of wine. Maybe. I opened the folder and started going through the contents methodically. Hotel receipt from the Marriott in Boston, 2 rooms booked, 1 canceled. Text message screenshots. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Room 412. Credit card charges for expensive dinners. Always for 2 people. Always on her business trip dates. How long have you been planning to leave me? I asked without looking up. I wasn't planning to leave you. No? So this was just for fun? It wasn't supposed to be anything serious. It just happened. I found a photo of them together at some hotel bar, Julia laughing at something Marcus was saying. She looked happy in a way I hadn't seen in years. You look pretty serious here. Evan, please. 6 months. I kept flipping through pages. 6 months of business trips that weren't really business trips. 6 months of coming home and kissing me hello after you'd been with him. 6 months of lying to my face every single day. I know how it looks. How it looks? I finally raised my voice. How it looks is like my wife has been living a double life. How it looks is like everything about our marriage has been a lie. Julia flinched. That's not true. I love you. You love me? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You love me so much that you've been screwing Marcus Kim for half a year? You love me so much that you brought home chlamydia? That's a funny way of showing it. It didn't mean anything. Stop. I held up a hand. Just stop talking. Every word out of your mouth makes this worse. I gathered up the papers and headed for my home office. Julia followed me. Where are you going? To read the rest of this. To figure out exactly how stupid I've been. Evan, wait. I shut the office door in her face and turned the lock. Then I sat down at my desk and started reading everything Dr. Kim had compiled. It was worse than I'd imagined. Text messages that were explicitly intimate, photos of them together in various hotel rooms, credit card records showing he'd bought her jewelry, expensive lingerie, weekend getaways that she'd told me were work conferences. The most damning evidence was a series of text messages from just 2 weeks ago. Marcus, when are you going to tell him? Julia, I can't, not yet. Marcus, we can't keep doing this forever. Julia, I know, I just need more time. Marcus, time for what? Julia, to figure out how to do this without losing everything. So she had been planning to leave me, or at least she'd been thinking about it seriously enough to discuss it with him. I found myself thinking about the past 6 months, looking for signs I'd missed. She had been working late more often, more business trips than usual, new lingerie that she claimed was just for herself, a new gym membership she rarely talked about. Her phone always face down on tables. How had I been so blind? A soft knock on the door interrupted my thoughts. Evan, can we please talk? We are talking, through the door. This isn't fair, you won't even let me explain. Explain what, Julia? I've got 50 pages of explanation right here. Pictures, receipts, text messages. What could you possibly add to this? Silence. That's what I thought, I said. I heard her footsteps retreating down the hallway. A few minutes later, I heard the front door slam. I looked out the window and saw her car pulling out of the driveway. Good. I needed space to think. I spent the next 3 hours going through every piece of evidence Dr. Kim had provided. By the time I finished, I had a pretty clear picture of my wife's double life. The affair had started at a medical supply conference in Chicago 6 months ago. They'd been meeting regularly ever since, using her business trips as cover. Marcus had been pushing for her to leave me, but Julia had been hesitant. Not because she loved me, but because she was worried about the financial implications of divorce. That hurt worse than the affair itself somehow. The idea that she'd been calculating the cost of leaving me like a business decision. My phone buzzed with a text from Julia. Staying at Sarah's tonight, we need to talk tomorrow. Sarah was her best friend and co-worker, probably the only person who knew about the affair. I wondered if Sarah had been covering for her, providing alibis and moral support for my wife's betrayal. I texted back, "Take your time." Then I poured myself a drink and tried to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do next. Julia came home the next evening with red eyes and a rehearsed speech. I could tell she'd been practicing because she kept pausing in the wrong places, like she was remembering bullet points. "I know you're angry," she began. "I know I've hurt you terribly, and I know sorry isn't enough. But I want to try to make this right." I was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and the evidence folder. "How do you propose to do that?" "Counseling. I'll end things with Marcus completely. We can work through this." "You'll end things with Marcus," I repeated. "How generous of you. I know it sounds like you're negotiating, like this is some kind of business deal you're trying to salvage." I took a sip of coffee. "Tell me something, Jules. If Dr. Kim hadn't been Marcus's wife, if you hadn't gotten caught, would you still be sleeping with him?" She hesitated just long enough to answer the question. "I see," I said. "That's not fair. You can't ask hypothetical questions." "It's not hypothetical. You were planning to leave me. I saw the text messages." I was confused. I didn't know what I wanted. "You seemed to know what you wanted when you were in hotel rooms with him." Julia's composure cracked. "Why are you being so cruel?" "Cruel?" I stood up, feeling 10 years of frustration boiling over. "You want to know what's cruel? Cruel is coming home every night for 6 months and pretending to be a loving wife while you were screwing another man. Cruel is making me worry about your health when you brought home an STD from your affair. Cruel is letting me find out from his wife that my marriage has been a joke for half a year. I never wanted you to find out this way. How did you want me to find out? Were you planning to send me a memo? Maybe a PowerPoint presentation? Stop it. No, I'm just getting started. You want to talk? Let's talk. Let's talk about how you looked me in the eye every morning and lied to me. Let's talk about how you let me plan our anniversary dinner while you were planning your next hotel rendezvous. Let's talk about how stupid you must think I am." "I don't think you're stupid." "Then what? What did you think was going to happen? That you'd just keep both lives going indefinitely? That I'd never figure it out?" Julia sank into a chair, crying again. I thought I could figure out what I wanted without hurting anyone. Without hurting anyone? I laughed bitterly. How's that working out for you? I know I messed up. You didn't mess up, Julia. You made a choice. Every day for 6 months, you made a choice. You chose him over me, over our marriage, over our life together. The only thing you messed up was getting caught. She looked up at me with mascara running down her cheeks. So what happens now? Now you pack your things and get out of my house. Evan, please. I'm not discussing this anymore. I'll file for divorce tomorrow. You can have your lawyer contact mine. This is still my house, too. Actually, it's not. It's my house. My name on the deed, my down payment, my mortgage payments. You wanted to keep your finances separate, remember? For independence. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Julia had insisted on keeping our money separate when we got married, claiming she wanted to maintain her financial independence. Now that independence was going to leave her without a place to live. Where am I supposed to go? I don't know. Maybe Marcus can help you figure it out. Oh wait, he's getting divorced too, isn't he? Maybe you two can find a nice apartment together. Make an honest affair out of it. You're being horrible. I'm being honest. For the first time in months, someone in this house is being completely honest. Julia stood up slowly. Fine. I'll pack some things. Take whatever you want. I don't care anymore. She headed toward the stairs, then turned back. For what it's worth, I really am sorry. So am I said. I'm sorry I wasted 10 years of my life with someone who could do this. I'm sorry I trusted you. I'm sorry I believed you when you said you loved me. I do love you. No, you don't. You love the idea of me. You love having someone safe to come home to while you play house with your boyfriend. But you don't love me, Julia. If you loved me, this never would have happened. She didn't have an answer for that. Word travels fast in a town the size of ours, especially when it involves prominent people like Julia and Marcus. By the end of the week, everyone knew about the affair, the STD, and the spectacular way it had all come crashing down. I found out just how fast when my friend Mike called me at work. Holy shit, Evan. Is it true about Julia and Marcus Kim? Depends what you heard. That his wife caught them because they both got chlamydia? Yeah, that's true. Jesus Christ. I'm sorry, man. That's rough. It is what it is. But it wasn't just Mike. By Friday, I'd gotten calls from half a dozen people, all expressing sympathy and morbid curiosity in equal measure. The story had taken on a life of its own, growing more dramatic with each retelling. The version I heard from my neighbor had Julia and Marcus getting caught in bed together by Dr. Kim. The version my coworker told me involved a dramatic confrontation in the hospital lobby. The truth was somehow both more mundane and more humiliating than the rumors. Julia, meanwhile, had moved in with her friend Sarah temporarily. She'd been calling and texting constantly, alternating between apologies and anger. I'd stopped responding after the first day. Saturday morning, I was in my garage working on my motorcycle when Marcus Kim pulled into my driveway. I'd been expecting this. He got out of his car slowly, hands visible, like he was approaching a dangerous animal, which, given my mood, wasn't entirely inaccurate. Evan, can we talk? I set down my wrench and looked at him. He was smaller than I'd expected, probably 5'8" and soft around the middle. Not particularly impressive for someone who'd blown up 2 marriages. What do you want, Marcus? I want to apologize, man to man. Apologize for what exactly? He shifted uncomfortably. For what happened? For the affair? For hurting you? You're not sorry for the affair. You're sorry you got caught. That's not true. Sure it is. If your wife hadn't figured it out, you'd still be screwing mine. Don't insult my intelligence. Look, I know you're angry. Angry? I stepped closer to him. Angry doesn't begin to cover it. Marcus took a step back. I just thought we should clear the air. Maybe work something out. Work something out? Like what? I don't know. Some kind of understanding. I stared at him for a long moment. You want an understanding? Here's your understanding. If I see you anywhere near me or my property again, I'm going to break your jaw. That understanding enough for you? There's no need for threats. It's not a threat. It's a promise. Marcus backed toward his car. Julia said you were reasonable. Julia said a lot of things. Turns out she's not very reliable. He got in his car and drove away quickly. I went back to working on my bike, but my hands were shaking with rage. An hour later, my phone rang. Julia. Did you threaten Marcus? Hello to you too. He said you threatened to break his jaw. I told him what would happen if he came around here again. That's not a threat, it's a public service announcement. You can't just… I can't what? Defend my property? Tell your boyfriend to stay away from me? He's not my boyfriend anymore. Oh, so you dumped him too? How noble of you. It's over between us. I told you, I want to work things out with you. There's nothing to work out, Julia. We're getting divorced. I filed the papers yesterday. Silence on the other end of the line. You didn't waste any time, she said finally. Why would I? You didn't waste any time starting your affair. I thought maybe if we had some space, some time to think. I've had plenty of time to think. I've thought about 10 years of marriage down the drain. I've thought about all the lies you told me. I've thought about how everyone in town is talking about what an idiot I am for not seeing what was right in front of me. People will forget. Will they? Will they forget that my wife gave me an STD she caught from her lover? Will they forget that I had to find out from his wife in a hospital room? Because I sure as hell won't. Evan, please. I hung up. 2 weeks later, I was having a beer at Murphy's Tavern when Julia's friend Sarah walked in with 2 other women I recognized from her office. They settled into a booth across the room, but I could feel them looking at me and whispering. After about 20 minutes, Sarah approached my table. Evan, can I talk to you for a minute? Sure. She sat down across from me, looking nervous. I wanted to apologize for my part in all this. Your part? I knew about the affair. Julia told me about it months ago. I should have said something. I took a sip of my beer and studied her face. Sarah had always been Julia's closest friend, her partner in crime for girls' nights and shopping trips. I'd never particularly liked her. Too gossipy, too involved in other people's business. Why didn't you? She's my friend. She was confused, trying to figure out what she wanted. I thought it was better to stay out of it. Stay out of it by helping her lie to me? Sarah flushed. I never lied to you directly. No, you just provided cover for her. Alibis when she needed them. A shoulder to cry on when she felt guilty. She did feel guilty. She was torn up about it. Not torn up enough to stop doing it. She loves you, Evan. She made a mistake, but she loves you. I laughed. You know what? I'm getting really tired of people telling me how much my wife loves me. If this is what Julia's love looks like, I'll pass. She wants to make things right. By moving in with you and calling me every day to tell me how sorry she is? By sending her friends to plead her case in bars? Sarah's eyes flashed with anger. She's trying to give you space to cool down. Cool down? You think this is about me being hot-headed? You think if I just calm down and think rationally, I'll take her back? I think you're throwing away 10 years of marriage because of one mistake. One mistake that lasted 6 months. One mistake that involved hotel rooms and expensive dinners and planning a future together. One mistake that gave me chlamydia. People work through worse things. Do they? Do they really? I leaned forward. Tell me, Sarah, if your husband had been screwing another woman for 6 months, would you work through it? She didn't answer. That's what I thought. This is different. How is it different? Because Julia realizes what she's lost. Because she's willing to do anything to fix this. Anything except go back in time and not screw Marcus Kim for half a year. Sarah stood up abruptly. You're being cruel. I'm being honest. There's a difference. She's my friend, and I care about her. Seeing her like this, seeing how destroyed she is. She's destroyed? I stood up too, my voice rising. She's destroyed? What about me? What about my life that got blown apart because your friend couldn't keep her legs closed? The bar went quiet. Everyone was staring at us. You don't have to be vulgar. Vulgar? You want to know what's vulgar? Vulgar is finding out your wife has been cheating from the woman whose husband she's been screwing. Vulgar is getting test results for transmitted diseases because your wife brought home a souvenir from her affair. Vulgar is having the entire town talking about what a fool you are. Sarah's face was bright red. She made a mistake. Stop calling it a mistake. Mistakes are accidental. This was a choice. Every hotel room, every lie, every time she came home and kissed me after being with him, those were choices. Fine. She made bad choices, but she's paying for them now. Not nearly enough. Sarah stared at me for a moment, then shook her head. I thought you were better than this. Better than what? Better than being angry that my wife destroyed our marriage? Better than refusing to pretend this never happened? Better than being vindictive. I haven't been vindictive. I've been honest. If you can't handle honesty, that's your problem. She walked back to her table without another word. I finished my beer and left, but not before I heard one of her friends say, "What an asshole." Let them think I was an asshole. At least I wasn't a cheater. The divorce proceedings moved quickly since Julia didn't contest anything. She couldn't afford to. The evidence was overwhelming, and her lawyer advised her to settle rather than drag things out in court. I kept the house, the cars, and most of our assets. Julia got her personal belongings and half of our savings account, which wasn't much since I'd been the primary earner throughout our marriage. But the real satisfaction came from watching her professional life implode. Marcus had already been fired from his job when his company found out about the affair. Apparently, sleeping with clients' representatives was against company policy. Who knew? Julia's situation was more complicated since she worked for a marketing firm that prided itself on its family values and professional integrity. They couldn't fire her for having an affair, but they could make her life miserable in other ways. Her biggest client dropped her account after word got around about the circumstances of our divorce. 2 others followed suit. Her boss, who'd always been a bit of a moral crusader, started scrutinizing her work more closely and finding fault with projects that would have been acceptable before. Within 6 weeks of our separation, Julia had been demoted from senior account manager to junior associate. Her salary was cut by 40%, and her office was moved to a windowless room in the basement. I heard about all this from Mike, whose wife worked at the same company. I should have felt sorry for her, but I didn't. Actions have consequences, and Julia was finally experiencing hers. The final blow came when Marcus's ex-wife, Dr. Kim, filed a complaint with the state medical board alleging that Julia had interfered with her marriage and caused emotional distress that affected her ability to practice medicine. It was a stretch legally, but it didn't matter. The complaint was public record, and it included detailed allegations about the affair, the STD transmission, and the circumstances of discovery. Local newspapers picked up the story, and suddenly Julia's name was associated with a medical scandal. Her remaining clients dropped her within days. She called me, crying, begging for help. "They're destroying my career," she sobbed into the phone. "I'm going to lose everything." "You already lost everything that mattered," I said calmly. "Now you're just losing the things that don't." "How can you be so cold?" I learned from an expert. "I know I hurt you, but this is my livelihood. This is my future. You should have thought about that before you decided to blow up your life. Please, Evan, I'm asking for your help, for old times' sake." "What old times? The times when you were lying to me? The times when you were planning to leave me? Which old times are you referring to exactly? I know you hate me. I don't hate you, Julia. Hate requires caring, and I don't care about you anymore. You're just someone I used to know. That's not true. It is true. You made sure of that when you chose Marcus over me. You can't unmake that choice now that it's not working out the way you planned. What am I supposed to do? I don't know. Maybe you should ask Marcus for advice. Oh wait, he's unemployed too, isn't he? Maybe you two can figure it out together. We're not together anymore. Right, you dumped him when the going got tough. Just like you would have dumped me if things had worked out differently. That's not... It's exactly what happened. You're not sorry you had the affair, Julia. You're sorry it didn't work out the way you wanted. I hung up and blocked her number. 6 months after our divorce was finalized, I ran into Marcus at the grocery store. He looked terrible, unshaven, 20 pounds heavier, wearing clothes that had seen better days. He saw me coming and tried to avoid eye contact, but I walked straight up to him. Marcus, how's unemployment treating you? He looked around nervously. Fine, I'm fine. Are you? Because you look like shit. I'm getting by. Good for you. I heard Julia moved to Portland. Fresh start and all that. His face darkened. Yeah, she left last month. Left you behind, did she? That must sting. We weren't together anymore anyway. No? What happened? I thought you two were soulmates. It didn't work out. Funny how that happens when the excitement wears off. When it's not forbidden anymore, when there's no one to lie to, it loses its appeal. Marcus started to walk away, but I followed him. You know what the best part is? I continued. You two destroyed your marriages for each other, and you couldn't even make it work. All that pain, all that damage, and for what? A few months of playing house before she got bored and moved on? Leave me alone. She used you, Marcus, just like she used me. The difference is I was her husband. You were just her midlife crisis. I said leave me alone. Or what? You'll call the police? Tell them the man whose wife you screwed for 6 months is being mean to you? Marcus turned to face me, his face flushed with anger and humiliation. You think you're so much better than me? I know I am. I never broke up someone else's marriage. I never gave anyone an STD. I never lied to someone who trusted me for months on end. She was unhappy with you. Was she? Or did she just tell you that to make herself feel better about what she was doing? She said whatever you wanted to hear, just like she told me whatever I wanted to hear. That's what Julia does. She tells people what they want to hear, so she can get what she wants. Marcus stared at me, and I could see the truth of it hitting him. You really think she didn't love me? I think she loved the idea of you, the excitement, the secrecy, the feeling of being desired by someone new. But love? Real love? No, I don't think Julia knows what that is. Then why did she leave her marriage for me? She didn't leave her marriage for you. She left it because she got caught. If Dr. Kim hadn't figured it out, Julia would still be married to me and still screwing you on business trips. Marcus's shoulders sagged. She said she was going to tell you. She said a lot of things. How many of them turned out to be true? He didn't answer. That's what I thought. I walked away, leaving him standing alone in the cereal aisle, finally understanding what I'd figured out months ago. Julia hadn't loved either of us. She'd loved the game, the deception, the thrill of living a double life. Once that was gone, once she had to choose, she'd chosen herself. And in the end, that choice had left her with nothing. Epilogue. The end. A year later, I was sitting on my back deck with a beer, watching the sunset and thinking about how quiet my life had become. Good quiet, not lonely quiet. The kind of peace that comes from not having to wonder what lies you're being told or what secrets are being kept. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Evan, this is Julia. I know you blocked me, but I wanted you to know I'm sorry. For everything. I hope you're happy. I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. She was right about one thing. I was happy. Not the desperate, grasping kind of happiness that comes from trying to hold on to something that's slipping away, but the solid, steady happiness that comes from knowing exactly where you stand. I'd learned something important from the whole experience. Sometimes the best revenge isn't elaborate schemes or public humiliation. Sometimes it's just living well while the people who wronged you face the consequences of their choices. Julia had lost her marriage, her career, her reputation, and her lover. She'd traded 10 years of stability for 6 months of excitement, and it had cost her everything. Marcus had lost his wife, his job, and his dignity. He'd thought he was stealing another man's wife, but he'd just been a temporary distraction for a woman who didn't know what she wanted. And me? I'd lost a marriage that was built on lies and gained a life that was built on truth. I finished my beer and went inside to start dinner. Tomorrow was Saturday, and I was having lunch with a woman I'd met at the gym, a divorce lawyer who understood exactly what I'd been through and appreciated a man who valued honesty above all else. Julia had given me chlamydia, but she'd also given me something more valuable: the knowledge that I deserved better than someone who could look me in the eye and lie to me every day for 6 months. The infection had cleared up with antibiotics. The marriage had ended with divorce papers. And my life had started over with the simple recognition that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that could have happened. I never saw Julia or Marcus again. I heard through mutual friends that she'd struggled to rebuild her career in Portland and that he'd moved back in with his mother. But their problems weren't my problems anymore. I'd learned to live without wondering what my wife was really doing on her business trips, without checking her phone for suspicious messages, without that nagging feeling that something wasn't quite right. The double life was over. The lies were finished. The truth had set me free, and that was worth more than any marriage built on deception could ever be.